Trauma Therapist Podcast Plus listeners can listen to episodes early and ad-free right now. Become a Plus listener by going to Apple Podcasts, searching for the Trauma Therapist Podcast, and signing up today. All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to help trauma therapists be their incredible selves, to be human, to be real, not just a clinician. I'm a big believer in who we are is more important than what we know. And this requires cultivating authenticity, genuineness, and vulnerability, and that requires intention. You can learn more about my courses and workshops by going to thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. Let's get started. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have back Doreen Hills. Doreen, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So Doreen, as you will recall, is the founder, director at the Center for Healing Trauma and Attachment. Their mission is to provide cutting-edge treatment approaches in healing traumatic distress. They're also committed to finding ways to provide quality and affordable therapy and to be the pioneer in healing trauma in the Northeast region. Doreen has been a mental health provider for over 20 years and has worked in various mental health settings in New York, Philippines, and Colorado. Her background includes intense and immersed experiences working with poverty-stricken fishermen in the Philippines, orphans that were severely neglected and abandoned, as well as Muslims in Manila. Doreen has conducted and facilitated trainings, workshops, and presentations in Morgan County and neighboring Northeast counties in Colorado on topics of attachment, trauma, neuroscience, among others. Today, we're continuing our discussion with the assessment of children. All right, Doreen. So for those listeners maybe who haven't listened before, just remind them where you're from originally and where you are currently.
Yeah, my roots are came from the Philippines. I received my bachelor's degree there, and I transplanted in New York, and then moved to Colorado. And I've been in Colorado since 2006, and I was a private practitioner, and I still have my private practice and developed the trauma center.
So in a previous interview, we touched upon doing an assessment with children. And what age are we talking? Between what and what age?
Yes, so I can say toddler, 5. Let's do 5 years old. Let's do 5 and onwards. Yeah.
Okay. So let's, if we can here, kind of summarize, give us kind of the nutshell maybe of what we talked about before, or an introductory nutshell, and then we'll get more specific about our topic today.
Yes, sure. So we talked about the trauma-informed assessment with grown-ups, with adults, and I really wanted to dig into the trauma-informed assessment with children, which is very important for us clinicians to understand and to know. So I wanted to just review the 4 pillars of what is trauma-informed care. First is realizing that, adversities can happen to each and every one of us, including children. Recognizing the signs, recognizing the trauma triggers, as well as, their stories, their strengths. So we can use that as a way to move them into the post-traumatic growth. Pretty important there. And then the third R stands for responding healthily in working with people. So being able to be aware of where you're at as a clinician, being able to know what traumatic stress is and all that knowledge, information, so you can educate clients. And the third one and the fourth one is actually for us. How do we resist? Because when we work with a lot of traumatized people, what do we do to resist revictimization for them, and also resisting secondary trauma for us? So just to kind of, summarize the 4 pillars of trauma-informed care: realizing, responding, actually realizing, recognizing, responding, and resisting. So those are usually, that's usually what I utilize, and that's my foundation when I work with individuals experiencing trauma, and even with kids.
Okay. So with that as a kind of foundation here, doing an assessment with kids, as we all know, is can be really, really challenging. So
Yeah.
how do you even approach this?
Um, I always believe we cannot pick and choose, right? Especially in the Northeast area, we cannot pick and choose who we work with. When people need help, we really need to understand what we're doing. We need to get trainings as much as possible. And so with kids, is what you say, there is beauty, there's fun, there's also challenge working with kids. It's the same, it may not be the same, but there's challenge working with adults as well. I just wanted to, I've worked with the youngest that I work with is actually 3 years old. But let's just use the 5-year-old as or as a template here. So when I work with little kids, and I'm talking about toddlers and even children, school age children to middle school to teen, it is so important to always bring these 4 components in trauma-informed assessment, moving towards doing your ongoing therapy. There's the 2 C's and the 2 P's. The first 2 C's is being creative. Clinicians, you've got to look at things outside the box when working with kids. Being creative in the session, and what would that look like? Utilizing play, utilizing toys, art, utilizing movement as a way to connect with them. And then curiosity is kids are naturally born curious. So you've got to be attuned to that. What are they curious about? What are you curious about them? Mm-hmm. And I think it is important for us to be, now we're moving into the 2 P's, which is being playful. And I'm talking about starting, the first session with them, utilizing playfulness, utilizing colors, sounds, music, and just sitting with them, in the therapy session, and using games as assessment tools. And the next P that I have is planning. So pretty crucial here, because oftentimes when we get comfortable and we just, okay, here's the assessment, this is what's going on, with the kids or with the adults that we work with. Okay, we'll just see, we assume that they're going to sit down and everything's going to be, talk therapy. Mm-hmm. When I mean planning, and again, intentional planning, on my assessment, I ask them, what do they like to do? What are the things that they enjoy? And so when I review the assessment, I already have a little glimpse of what kind of gadgets, what kind of toys, what kind of atmosphere can I have in my preparation? Can I use when I see this child? So, for example, I've worked with this 5-year-old. And she loves from my the assessment, the intake, she loves to play Play-Doh. She likes Play-Doh, she likes games, she likes music. And so I weave those activities in assessment. And when you do that, you got their connection. Because remember, it's not only adults that can fire us. even kids do. And that may, oh, go ahead.
If I just may interject for 1 second.
Yeah.
So just to bring this back
It's
for
a
a
lot of
second.
information, right?
It's a lot of information, but you have a really great way of distilling a lot of information into easily digestible nuggets here. So, but this is a trauma-informed assessment. Are we talking about a basic assessment of a young kid that's trauma informed, or are we talking about maybe you've suspected trauma and you're doing an assessment?
So I don't know if this will answer your question. So we in our center, we already have the strong assumption that whoever comes in our door have trauma.
Okay.
And oftentimes the intake or even the referral, the very early phase is, let's say my kiddo, usually parents or guardians, we would like to see you, or we would like to get in because, there's behaviors going on and there was a significant trauma. They're probably exposed to domestic violence in the last couple months, or parents or somebody they love died. So we already have the idea that, okay, something traumatic or even distressing happened to this little person.
Okay.
And usually 100% confirmed by the guardian's reports, through intake that they complete before I see the child.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. All right. So continue. You were working with this kid.
Yes. So, when I work with this 5-year-old, and again, the intake, I created my own intake. I included there what are the things that they love to do, that they enjoy, that they feel connected or having fun. And so I already have those ideas. And what I do is before I see the child, when I get those information, when I have a little bit of those information, I actually tailor my room that way. So it's intentional, when they come in, most of the things that they love to do are already there. I've got all kinds of Play-Dohs. I've got the smelly Play-Dohs. I've got the glitter Play-Dohs, and she likes to move. And so I have the butterfly, like the butterfly, you can get at Dollar Tree, butterfly costume. And I weave those when I'm getting to know the child.
Okay. Now, what do you, if we can we continue with this kid here? What are you looking for? You've set the stage, you set the room beforehand. You've learned and listened to this kid to find out what they like to do. What are you looking for? And what did you see when you were working with this kid?
Mm-hmm. Two things. Two things that I always pay attention to is how do they regulate when they're with another person. And again, oftentimes we know that someone experienced trauma or PTSD because of the disruption of trust. And so I pay attention to how regulated or how dysregulated are they when they come and see me. Are they just bouncing off the wall? Are they, or even we can even call it energy, right? I use the word energy. Are they bouncing off the wall? Are they disconnected? Are they checking out? Are they slumped, slouched?
Mm-hmm.
And so I pay attention to those. And in fact, my first intake and assessment with kids is I want to find out how is your energy right now? That is my word. That's, how is your energy right now? And even a 5-year-old can understand that. Mm-hmm. Are you like here to where you just feel like you're bouncing off the wall? Are you in the middle to where I'm chillax, I'm good, I can hear Miss Doreen? Or are you feeling like, oh, I'm tired, I'm bored? And kids get that. And they'll say, well, I'm here right now. I'm really high right now. And so we already, in the very beginning, we already start to teach them regulation.
So you would use that information in what way?
I need to understand how, well, I don't know if I let me know if I answered your question. So I need to understand their ability to stay in that window of tolerance. And I think I wanted to understand their stress response. Is this child in a flight mode, in a fight mode, in a fawning mode, in a submission mode? And so this information will guide me to, to understand, to construct understand this person. What am I seeing? And not necessarily what they're saying to me. What am I seeing here? And this may take, and I know this can be quite challenging, especially when we deal with insurance companies, because oftentimes we only are given one-time intake assessment, right? And so we're limited. So if if I have to continue my assessment the next session, I weave in therapy there and also still getting to know them. Because oftentimes it takes me between 3 to 5 sessions to really get a good idea of where the child is.
How they've been impacted by the specific trauma and so forth. So I'd like to get specific here, and can we use this kid as an example here? How did things unfold with this kid, this 5-year-old? What did you see?
So again, I used the 4 things that I've shared with you guys: creativity, curiosity, playing, and planning. And over time, I mean, on those 3 to 5 session window, I was able to, I wanted to point so many things here. When I work with kids, so let's start with just that 5-year-old, I already asked this child, do you know why you are coming to see me? And I introduced myself, because kids understand sometimes counseling can be, or counselor or therapist can be a really huge, word for them. I use the word helper. Miss Doreen is here to help you with your feelings, or being able to help you control your emotions, or, being able to, share something that's been bugging you, something like that. Very simple and very clear. And so even a younger child can really understand, as long as you're clear, as long as you ask them, really clear question, like, do you know why your mom or your dad or your grandma, are coming, are having you see me? And most of the time, in this case, with this 5-year-old, yes, I do. And then the 2 of us, talk about, okay, you're coming. I'll just give you an example. We talk about, well, I'm having bad dreams. Just an example. I'm having bad dreams. Can you help me with my bad dreams? Or there's a monster in my closet.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're already identifying the goals. You're already identifying. So you wanted me to work with you on the monsters and the nightmares and all that stuff. Or even, I'm afraid to see such and such person. And so, okay, well, we can work on what do you think about these, what do you think about these options? Maybe we can make this nightmares or bad dreams just, go down a little bit. And kids love visual. So you're going to pay attention. And usually, sometimes there's a lot of goals, right? Just limit it to 1 to 2 or 1 to 3. So kids know, okay, I know why you're coming to see me, or I know why I'm coming to see you. So in that first session or in that intake, they know why they're going to therapy. Don't prolong it. Because sometimes, we kind of just get, okay, we assume that the child knows why they're coming. And it's bring it out in the open. And that's part of trauma-informed lens. Be transparent and let them know exactly, like, I'm here to help you on such and such and such and such. And you're coming here because of these reasons.
Initially, you talked about one of the words you used was re-victimization. So you're saying just bring it out in the open.
Bring it out.
This is what happened, or ask them what to talk about. Are you saying to ask them to talk about what happened, or to share what happened?
Well, I don't in the early, in the intake, but I give them that space to where, let's say it's open, right? Like, yeah, something bad happened to me. So let's say child, yeah, something really bad happened to me. And I would encourage them, when you are ready, when you are ready, you're feeling so ready and you feel like you are safe and just comfortable here, you have the whole space to talk about this when you're ready. And it gives them, sometimes, and I think this is very tricky, sometimes kids are there to please people.
Mm.
And so I give them space to where whenever you're ready, when the time comes that you feel safe, that you feel comfortable with Miss Doreen, then we can talk about this. But right now, what do you like to do? So you're giving, it's kind of like in the back of their mind, okay, at one point we will talk about it, but not right now.
You're giving them the control in a sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think even with grown-ups, kind of like, they have this idea in therapy, like, okay, I'm going to sit down right now and I'm going to tell you everything.
Okay.
And next thing you know, I don't want to see that person again because it's flooding me, right? Because it's too much. Right. We've got to give them opportunity and space to where when the time comes, you and I can figure out, a time to visit about this. And it doesn't have to be all of it. So giving them that, that ability to, okay, this is my choice. I can say when I'm, I can speak this up when I'm ready.
Just remind everyone, I'm speaking with Doreen Hills. She is the founder director at the Center for Healing Trauma and Attachment. We're talking about trauma-informed assessment for kids. So this is really fascinating to me. And I mean, just thinking about kids and trauma is just so friggin' sad. It's just, I think it's easy, we talk about all this stuff, and yet it's very easy to, I don't like thinking about it. No one likes thinking about kids being harmed, but yet it's amazing that there are people like you who are helping these kids. So obviously we're talking about a 5-year-old who doesn't necessarily has a limited verbal capacity to express what's going on. What does healing look like in a young kid like this? And I know it's going to be different for each kid, but
right.
How do you approach that, a response to that? What does healing look like for a young kid like this? How do you know when the kid is quote unquote healed or getting better or
getting better? Well, kids usually, again, that age, the toddler world, it's difficult to articulate, right? It's difficult to articulate what's going on inside, and just saying it out loud is so we have to use different kinds of play therapy, Santra, and all that cool stuff. But how do we know? It's usually seen through their behaviors. And I've worked very, short term with this kid, and of course it is important to have a collaborative relationship with the parents. That's part of treatment. I ask them, I have parents meet and ask them, what are the things that are going well for this child and what are the things that needs improvement? And so over time, I worked with this individual for about 6 months. And she's no longer, aggressive. And I even asked her, so, like let's say nightmares, gone, and you can see it. You can even see it in the play session. Because this individual did Santray, and she was able to articulate through the play that it's over, it's gone. And here's the last one. The parents are happy. The parents are happy, and they will tell you, that the child is progressing. Like, we're satisfied with the growth and, the behavior, the progress in behavior. And usually it's the behavior that's going to speak about the child's progress.
So it's your perspective, it's the parents' perspective, it's the kids' behaviors and actions and even words sometimes.
Yes.
Coming from all, wow.
And again, it's that embodied approach of you work not only, and I think that's where sometimes people don't get into the kids' work because it's challenging and there's a lot of work because there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of, people can be involved. And again, the bottom line is when you connect with the other people, like the grownups, you talk to the child and ask the child and let the child know why you need to visit with her mom and her dad, her teachers. So they are in every way, in the beginning, they are part of the team, first and foremost. And it doesn't matter, sometimes people say, well, they're not 12 years old yet, or they're not 18 yet to where they can consent. I don't care. That's the child's, this is the child's world. This is the child's therapy. They need to be part of it, no matter what.
Awesome. Doreen, I could talk so much longer, but
we're so much here.
Winding down here. You have some trainings coming up at the center. You want to briefly tell us about those and how people can learn about those?
Yes. So I'm actually going to be doing a conference in Lakewood, Colorado. It is complex trauma and supporting parents with complex trauma. I hope, listeners would hear this because I can do training on Zoom. And then I am actually going to do training international next Friday with the Philippines team. And I'm going to be doing training on ancestral trauma.
Wow.
And then on April 26th, again, we can do it via Zoom. I'm doing a training on complex trauma intersecting with community violence. So a lot of stuff going on. And I just hope that, listeners can reach out to us and we can do trainings all over the world, really.
Okay. And how do people reach out to you? What's the best way?
Yes, they can reach out to the website, chtainc.org. They can also email me at doreen@katainc.org.
Okay. And we'll have those linked up at the show notes page here at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Doreen, always inspiring talking to you. And we'll talk again. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Guy.
Bye-bye.